those who have been the beneficiaries of this system.
Welcome to On the Record, where we bring the pulse of the nation's capital straight to Black America. I'm your host, Ebony McMorris, White House correspondent for American Urban Radio Network. And today we have a trailblazer in the House, literally the House of Representatives, joining us. Representative Stacey Plaskett from U.S. Virgin Islands. And I'm excited because from challenging the status quo, on congressional floors to advocating tirelessly for our district. She is a voice of equity, of justice, and representation. And today I want to take a dive into some of her bolder stands she's taking, even one during the certification vote, and look at the future of the Republican-controlled Congress, what's next for this administration in the final days. Welcome, Representative. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. Thanks so much for reaching out and letting me be a part of the discussion.
Absolutely. I want to take a moment really quickly before we do anything to reflect on former President Jimmy Carter, whose services are being held on this Thursday, and even as we speak right now. What do you think about when you think of him when they were doing the service? One of the speakers said one thing he did was he was one of the first presidents to actually advocate even for the work and messaging of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That stuck out the most to me.
You know, I can recall and remember being a small child when Jimmy Carter was president. I lived in New York City at the time, and I remember it was a time of so many different robust programs in urban areas. You know, he was the individual who actually organized and started the Department of Education. If you can believe that there had not been a centralized standard and federal oversight and federal support for our education system before that, as well as the Department of Energy, FEMA, some of those other agencies, which I didn't know were agencies, but knew the effect of them and how they were affecting our lives. But I remember, you know, summer youth programs, support that the president had to uplift all Americans and to give us all opportunities to do better. Of course, Amy, remembering as a little girl and seeing a small young girl with this flaming red hair being in the White House alongside her parents, and recall that it's now become a status quo thing. But President Jimmy Carter was the first president in his inauguration to walk the route. That had not been done before. Presidents sat in the cars and waved at everyone. And Jimmy Carter, it was astounding to see a man actually walk to the White House and to be a person of the people. That was really the message. Their daughter went to public school in Washington, D.C. when they came here. And, you know, it was sitting in the Capitol building when they, at the rotunda, when they had the service there, so many members were tearing up just at the thought of what has been lost from the time of Jimmy Carter to now. Civility, service, humility, thinking less of self and more of others. Those are the kinds of things that so many of us are kind of wistful of having lost in the time that we're in now.
Can I be honest with you? I was sitting with my family, my grandmother, my mother, and we were talking. I said, this feels like one of the first presidents who I feel like people are giving him his flowers after he is gone. And realizing the importance of who now we're like, really like we need that type of character and nobility in office.
I think he, in his foresight, decided to have this state funeral so that those things could be discussed and people could have a way to come together. But I do know that, you know, listen, after leaving office was when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So there were instances in his life when he was rewarded for doing the work that he had. There's no place that Jimmy Carter went well after leaving office where he was not applauded, where the accolades did not come from lawmakers, from others. So I think he got his, the most for a president, the highest honors and the most ceremony is when they come into office in the inauguration,
Yeah.
and then when they pass away.
Yeah,
So we're
very
giving it to
good point.
him now as he passes away, and doing it with all the pomp and circumstance
Yes.
that he is deserving of.
I want to turn to you, because I literally stood up when I saw you during the certification of the vote last week. You stood up and you basically.
You mean the speaker vote?
Yes, the speaker vote. I'm sorry, the speaker vote. And you stood up and you talked about why really went into taxation without representation, but why U.S. Virgin Islands didn't have a vote. And it was a bold, historic move, I believe, that captured the attention nationwide, because while I knew, while you knew, while some others knew, this is something that the nation really need to pay attention to and focus on. Can you walk through us what happened and what prompted you to do that?
Well, I did this several years ago, maybe 6 years ago. When I first came, it was maybe my second swearing in. I may have stood up and raised the question. And my husband and I were really marveling at the difference between me doing it then and not really knowing how to navigate the floor and the rules, and how to the preparation, and to now, as a member much later, doing it. And I did it because I was that morning the only person who from my immediate family who was in Washington were my two youngest children. And I was in the car with my 15-year-old daughter. I have one girl, and I have four sons. So my my youngest son, and my daughter were with me. And I was like, what do you guys think about mommy causing a little trouble today?
No.
And they were like, yeah, we're here for it. We're here for it. And they were like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm not sure, but I think it's important for us to always raise our voices and let people know we're in the room. And so they were like, I like it. I like it. So when I got to the floor, I went to Hakeem Jeffries and told him, listen, I don't want to be disrespectful of you. You are my leader, and I want to let you know that I intend to do this and get your opinion on it. And in true, as we call him, Hawk, he was like, yeah, I really like that. He was like, do that. He was like, I like that, Stace. I like that. I like that.
Less, just do it.
And so, we talked about, and I actually went to used his team to go to the parliamentarian to let them know and give them a heads up and let the speaker know that this was going to happen, so that they could be prepared with their answer. And the point of my parliamentary inquiry was not that I didn't know the answer. I know the answer very well. But it was to raise the notion to everyone in the room and to the millions of people who were watching that this was what their rationale was. And what I've told people afterwards is that, listen, I understand what a territory is. And I understand the constitutional law governing how territories are treated. But here's the rub that all of the territories in the District of Columbia have. That up until territories were inhabited by predominantly brown and black people, there was always a process by which they could become a state. And they were always moving on to being a state. From South Dakota to Wyoming to all the other places except for the 13 original colonies who were the first states. And no one has waited as long as we have to become a state. Puerto Rico, 3 million people, larger than about 20 states, has waited over almost 150 years to be a state. That is unconscionable. And it's all, I want everyone to understand that for the territories, this is all based on case law called the Insular Cases, Supreme Court cases that were decided in the early 1900s by the same court who came up with the theory of Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal. And in these cases, the same judges, the same justices said that people living in the territories are alien races, they are savages who cannot understand Anglo-Saxon principles of law, and therefore they are not worthy, or at this time, they cannot be trusted with the full benefits and responsibilities of American citizenship. That's outrageous. You know, when I think about the island where my family is from, St. Croix, we produced and brought to the United States Alexander Hamilton, who wrote the freaking Constitution, helped to write the Constitution. And now you're saying that we don't understand Anglo-Saxon principles of law? Dude, we helped write it. And you're saying we don't understand it. I'm grateful, however, that under President Biden, a bipartisan, bicameral letter that I led was written to the Department of Justice saying, you guys have got to stop relying on these cases. And the Justice Department, under Merrick Garland, agreed and issued a memorandum to all the U.S. attorney's offices saying that you can no longer rely on the racist rhetoric in the insular cases. So, and also, you know, prior to me getting up on the 116th and the 117th Congress, where Nancy Pelosi was the speaker, she included in her H.R. 1 bill, which is a bill on voting rights and election integrity, a provision, a whole section that was on creating a congressional task force and moving the territories into a place where they could have the full rights and inclusion in the American experience. Listen, for so many of us, you know, whether it's the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, all of these places, we have veterans in greater numbers, in greater per capita than other places in the United States. I recall that when in the Virgin Islands, when we became part of the American experience and were purchased from Denmark, if you can believe it, Ebony, we were purchased from Denmark. And in that purchase agreement, the U.S. agreed, okay, we're going to buy the Virgin Islands because right now this is of more strategic importance to us than Greenland. And we'll allow.
I was gonna go there. I'm gonna just let you go because this is a
They're
whole.
like, we're gonna allow Greenland to maintain its sovereignty and release it from any designs on the part of the United States, but we want the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so the country of Denmark received 25 million in gold bullion that was sent to Copenhagen for the purchase of the Virgin Islands. And they had an agreement from the United States that Virgin Island citizens would not be citizens of anywhere for a particular period of time. So all four of my grandparents for a 10-year span were citizens of no place. And that allowed actually Denmark to be able to extract way more wealth, resources, records out of the territory before it was transferred over. That money and what they got allowed Denmark to go from a country of depression to one of the happiest countries in the world. And we, the Virgin Islands, were left with a fractured position. But my grandparents' generation went to Washington and said, listen, if you are making us U.S. citizens, we want to be part of the draft. We want the responsibility along with the privileges of saying we're American citizens. And that's what we're asking. We want the responsibility as well as the privileges. And one of those rights and, you know, voting is a responsibility. We want that responsibility. And the other argument, Ebony, that is always raised is, well, it'll be a bunch of Democrats. Right now, if we make a state, right now in the House, there are 3 Republican members of territories and 3 Democratic members of territories and the District of Columbia. So it's not a foregone conclusion that we're going to be one way or the other. We're not a monolithic people. We have different ideas and views and ideologies. We've had Republican governors of the Virgin Islands. We've had Republican representatives come to Washington. And you need to give us our fair share. We do. We are ready for it. And I felt it was necessary for me to draw attention to that. And I'm grateful for the members that stood up on my behalf. But I have to tell you, Ebony, there were also Republicans afterwards, and particularly members of the Republican Party who had been in the military, who came up to me and was like, you know, I did not know there were that many veterans. I did not know that you guys do that. And this is reminiscent to me. This is what a Republican said to me. This is reminiscent of African Americans who fought in World War I and World War II and then came back and didn't have the right to vote.
Ooh,
Whatever you put forward, I'm willing to support it. So
wow.
it's baby steps,
Yeah.
right? It's those of us who've got to stand up and speak out that are going to make the difference.
I remember, I'm a DC native through and through.
Are you one of them? You're one of those rare species, those native Washingtonians.
Very rare. So there's a whole lot I want to say, but I'm a.
Oh boy, y'all
Right.
are special. You know that. This is such a transient town, so you all
Oh,
who
my
are born
goodness.
here feel very strongly about being born here.
Woo! I mean, our roots go deep. Like the fight is real. So when you're talking, I'm just like, I think of course, Representative Norton, and
Yeah.
oh my goodness, like I am DC through and through, and this fight and this struggle has been hard for natives here. So I can understand what you're saying. But one thing that, and I know I can't keep you but so long. You just ran down an entire history, some of what I knew, some of what I did not know. And I'm looking at this beautiful Black woman that is sitting in this place in this 119th Congress. And now we have two Black female senators who are going to be part of this. Angela Alston-Brooks, to have this shout out.
Yeah, I love that's my soror. I love that girl.
Oh, wonderful. And so, why is it so important for you to be sitting where you are, but also trying to move forth in the power, because you carry a lot? Like I heard a lot with that, and I heard the emotion and connection and work that's connected to that.
Yeah. When I first came to Congress, members get two assignments, right? They get two committees that you sit on. And members of the territories have full voting rights in the committees. We now have full voting rights when we are on the floor in committee of the whole. It's in final passage that we don't have a vote. So when you get to Congress, you are assigned a committee. And I was told, hey, you should sit on the Natural Resources Committee, because that's where all the members of the territories sit, because that deals with insular affairs. I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me, because all the members of New York don't sit on financial services, although finances are really important in New York. And all of the members don't sit on any one committee from a particular delegation. And I consider us all part of the same delegation. I was like, I want to sit where everybody else sits. And people thought that was like strange and different and new that a member would do that. And today, I'm now on the Ways and Means Committee, which is the oldest and the most exclusive committee in Congress. Only 4 Black women have ever been appointed to the Ways and Means Committee. I'm one of the 4, and I'm the first member from a territory or the District of Columbia to sit on there. And it's because I did not accept the status quo, because I came in and said, I want to be treated like everybody else. I want to do the work of everyone else. I have the respect of my colleagues because even when I don't have to vote, I go to the floor.
Yes.
And I'm there. And I know what the votes are about. I know I have a position on each one of them. So sometimes I give members advice about which way they should vote based on their district and how they should, what's important and what are the ramifications of each of those legislation. And that's how we all, particularly as Black women, have to show up. My life has always been being a token, being a minority, whether it was in schools or in the workplace. And as you know, I have to go in there thinking that I know I'm coming in here more prepared than everybody else in here. And I'm going to use that to the benefit of myself and my people. Whether those are my constituents, whether those are my children, whether those are young Black women that are looking at me. Shoot, sometimes those are young white men that are looking at me and then seeing an example of, oh, you know what? I have worked for Congresswoman Plaskett, and I know that Black women are prepared. That what I hear from the bros is not the truth, because I've seen one in action. And that's how we have to show up each and every place.
Before we go, just two last questions I'll ask you at the same time. One, what are the things that you want that America needs to pay attention to as we go
Yeah.
forward in this new administration? And secondly, President Biden just has less than 2 weeks left in office, just a few days left. We've seen him do some pardons. We saw what happened when it came to medical debt. What are some things that you want him to do upon exit? I feel like give us the 12 days of I need
The
gift
12
giving
days of
from him.
Christmas.
Right. I need gift giving from him. All of it. All of it.
We're looking to see more pardons done, particularly for nonviolent drug offenses, right? To give people second chances. I have people in my district that have paid their debt, started, were caught up in the game. And I was a narcotics prosecutor. So it's not to say that I think that drugs, selling drugs is an appropriate activity for individuals, but I know that without these pardons, without their records being expunged, that they are being penalized in moving forward. So some of those things I would love to see happen. I would love to see more work around student loan relief. The president was so fabulous and so strong in trying to give so many people a second chance with student loans. I'd like to see some more work around that. Talking today about what's happening in California, making sure that there are enough funding in disaster relief for California fires. And then also, it would be, wouldn't it be just amazing if he was able to still get some of his appointees across the line? But we know that's not going to happen, particularly on the federal bench, because there are so many people who are backlogged and waiting. But also just trying to see where there's maybe some more awards of the resources that are out there from the amazing legislation that he was done, whether it's the CHIPS Act, the bipartisan infrastructure plan, all of those funding that were put out there that the president was able to do in that first term, which were absolutely amazing to see if that money can be pushed out to people.
Absolutely. Representative Plaskett, thank you so much for not just for the interview, for the lesson.
Sure.
And for keeping
listen,
us
just know that, I know that people are exhausted. People are disappointed. So many people are disappointed in this election, this past election. But, I used the month of December, or I tried at least to try and get my mind right.
I tried.
Right? And there are going to be areas that we are going to work together with the Republicans. They have a slim margin. They're going to have to come to us. They're going to need some votes. They're going to need some people, and there will be areas for us to negotiate. And I'm happy to do that. Most of my colleagues on the Democratic side and some of the Republicans know I was a Republican appointee. I was a Republican staffer for many years. So I'm willing and I'm able to work across the aisle and find areas that we can agree on. But then there are areas that we are not going to agree on, and we need to stand firm in, whether it's supporting our children in school lunch programs, in food stamps, in our elders with Social Security. Those are the things that we need to stay strong in.
Oh my goodness, and voting rights, of course. So many things still left on the table. But I look forward to actually interviewing you in person. American Urban Radio Network.
I would love that.
We're going to be on the Hill as well. We're Black owned and operated, and I think it's important for us to also work together to push a lot of stories that I think will try to be pushed down in this year. But we are forging.
And maybe you guys need to come to the Virgin Islands and come and see some of our sites and the great history that we have there. Last year, I was able to do an unveiling on the island of St. John in the national park there of the first slave insurrection in the Western Hemisphere in the 1700s on the island of St. John, where the Kwamu slaves were able to hold the island for almost a year before they were repelled by 3 different nations coming together to stop them. And the site that we picked was where these leaders of the rebellion realized that they were not going to win. They had run out of ammunition. All was lost. And rather than go back to slavery, they all committed collective suicide by jumping off of a cliff in this particular area on St. John. So there's a rich history, Ebony. Come on down. We'd love to share that with you and let the rest of Black America and the country know about it.
I feel like Hawk. Say less. We're there. Thank you so much. Best wishes to you with this 119th session, and we will be reaching out to you in the future. But thank you so much, Representative Plaskett.
Thank you.